And I'm like, why would I do that? At first, I'm like, you want me to just do it for you? He's like, no, watch their feet when you do it. Right? He's like, once you do it, watch their feet. So look at which foot they move first and in which direction and how they move it. And I'm like, okay. Then I would notice, okay, this guy has bad footwork. Because if I circle the ring and you pause and then you got to turn, I'm like, ooh, and he's slow. His feet is like it's sloppy. Like, okay,
Okay, see?
I would know exactly what I can do. Right. I'm like, cool. I'm going, oh, I'm gonna take angles on this guy. He can't move, he can't punch, and he can't pivot. I'm like, ooh, okay. He adjusts slow. I'm like, ooh, okay. Or I'll pump the jab. I'm like, all right, is he going to fall for the feint? Okay, he's waiting to counter me. All right, cool, cool. Because I can see his hook, like, his hand like start to go up. I'm like, oh, he's trying to counter me over top. I'm like, cool. I'm like, if I feint to the body, what does he do? He takes a step back. He's trying to counter over top. I say, okay, I got it. It's about seeing what a guy knows. So
Right.
when you're prepared, you go in there with a game plan. You have so many different little moves and so many different tools in your toolbox to where you can literally set everything up. And when something goes wrong, you get to hit the reset button, which is what
Okay.
Floyd does great, which is what Andre Ward does great. It's what he did against Kovalev. He didn't fight the same way the whole fight. He was constantly adjusting. And then the thing is, like fans, when they look at a fight, they're looking at the whole fight, right? They're not dissecting the rounds. Like me, I do it round by round. I'm not looking at, oh, just because he dropped him in that round, he won the fight. I'm like,
No,
okay,
yeah, it's
he's
round
up
by
two
round. That's why
rounds
they have
because it's a
rounds.
10-8. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
10-8 round. So pretty much he's up 2 rounds. So I'm like, okay, let's see what he does. Marquez, for example, I always say this and people always argue, but I don't care. Marquez lost those fights against Pacquiao, but he beat Pacquiao. And when I say he
That
beat
makes sense.
Pacquiao, he outboxed Pacquiao. He was landing the shots. He kept Pacquiao at a distance. Pacquiao wasn't willing to gamble as much as he would anybody else, like a Barrera or a Morales. He wasn't as willing to gamble because Marquez had incredible timing. Like you don't get dropped 3 to 4 times and fight to a draw and not outbox the guy over
Yeah.
the duration of the fight, right?
Good point. Good
Like
point.
to be down literally to give him 3 to 4 extra rounds on top of whatever, you really have to have made an impact where judges are like, oh man, this is an even fight, right? Based on the score. And in the second fight, you lose by a close split decision. It's like, and you got dropped again multiple times. You had to outfight him in order to even get that close after being dropped so much. And I thought he was robbed in the third fight. In the fourth fight, I felt really told the story of the whole rivalry,
Right.
right? Like Marquez was just his kryptonite.
Yeah.
Like Pacquiao had to be on his game against Juan Manuel Marquez.
Yep. I
Like
agree.
to me,
And
that's
look,
like one of
Pacquiao to me is one of my all-time favorites. You
yeah, I
know,
love Pacquiao.
yeah,
I love
Pacquiao
his
to me,
feet.
that's my favorite boxer, you know.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm actually very excited to watch this fight August 21st against Errol Spence
man.
Jr. Who do you got on that fight and why?
You know, my heart says Pacquiao, but my mind says Spence. Spence is special.
I'm on the
Spence
same
is
boat.
special. Spence, what makes Spence real special is again, he's one of those guys who's prepared. He's one of those guys, he's not scared of nobody because he's preparing for everybody, right? So he's a guy, he's watching guys, and so when a guy is winning like Canelo, everybody's all in awe of Canelo, right? Spence is like, I can take advantage of that. I can beat this guy. I can go to the gym. I'm not saying, but he'll probably go to the gym and work on something that would beat Canelo. I
Yep.
get that vibe from him. I get that vibe from him to where other guys are in awe and they're like, oh, oh. But if you watch Spence when he's at these fights, blank face, he's studying. And I noticed that because I'm like, I know that look. He's studying these guys. He's thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
Spence is going to move up and he's going to keep winning titles. I think he's going to end up, I
I
think if
think
anybody beats Canelo, it's going to be Spence.
I
Even though
agree.
I
I was
give
just gonna
Caleb
say
Plant
that.
a 50-50 chance, I think if anybody beats Canelo, it's going to be Earl Spence. And I really believe that because Spence is just, he's different, man.
He's
That dude is
a
special.
perfectionist. He's like honestly, let's keep it real. He's like our modern day Mayweather.
Yeah. He's
Basically,
cut from that Mayweather Andre Ward cloth. He's cut
yeah.
from that cloth.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
So he's
he's just
our
always
Mayweather now.
prepared.
You know,
Yeah.
he's our Mayweather right now. And I agree. I got nothing but love and respect for Spence, honestly. But if I really have to put my money, and a lot of people are telling me What are you doing, AJ? I'm gonna put my
Pacquiao.
money on Pacquiao.
No, you know what? You know what? I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that because even though Spence is as amazing as Errol Spence is, Pacquiao is different. And Thurman learned that.
Yeah,
Thurman learned because
everybody was saying that
Thurman didn't
Thurman
hang
was
with
gonna win
Pacquiao.
that
Don't get me
fight.
wrong. Don't get me wrong. Thurman was really giving it to Pacquiao.
Oh yeah,
He lost, but he wasn't getting like dominated. He was putting up a fight. I love Thurman, but Spence is a dog. So with Pacquiao, I think Spence is going to give him a different look. It's like with Garcia. Garcia thought, okay, he's going to come in. He comes forward. He attacks the body. He does great body work. What did he do? He outboxed him, right? He
true.
outsmarted Garcia. He's like, why would I go to war with this guy? And that's what he's planning for.
You know what?
I'm going
Garcia
to make him
has
think,
never been
right?
the same since that fight.
He beat him in training camp. Garcia got beat in training camp because they're thinking, all right, he's going to fight me like he fought Sean Porter. He's going
Right.
to fight me like he fought these other guys. He
Mhm.
boxed him. He boxed him and he kept him at a distance. Garcia couldn't even get in. He wasn't ready for that. They
I
thought,
don't
oh,
even think Garcia even laid a solid punch.
he didn't.
He
He didn't
didn't.
because if you're Mikey Garcia and you're extremely talented like Mikey Garcia and you see a guy who comes forward and is aggressive, you're like, oh, I can probably beat this guy. That's my game. But then when that guy shows up and he shows you something you ain't never seen before,
Mhm.
we've never seen that out of Spence ever, right? But again, Spence is a perfectionist. He prepared for that fight. Him and Derek James together, like they are that they got something special. Derek James and Spence, that's why Spence won't lose because again, same trainer, same gym, same
Mhm.
philosophy. They're both geniuses. They work with each other. They're not trying to prove anything. They're preparing. They're going out to win, and
I
they
agree.
love to fight. And that's what it is. So they're like, all right, they expect us to do this. Errol, we probably gonna go in here. Let's box this guy. He's small. He's smaller than us. Let's keep him small, and it worked. And then of course you got people like Pacquiao who took shots at Mayweather, and it's like, why would Mayweather go toe to toe? Like
Yeah.
that's not what Mayweather does. Like you really, and I'm like, why wouldn't you prepare to fight Mayweather how you know Mayweather is going to fight?
Mhm.
Because again, Mayweather scared us. I mean, not scared us. He surprised us when he fought Mosley. I did not think Mayweather was going to come forward, sit in the pocket, and pick Mosley apart like that.
I mean, I think that's the only fight that he actually really did that, where he just sat in the pocket like that and would come forward to you.
He did because even with Marquez, he was
Usually you
setting
have to bring
traps
the
and
fight to
baiting.
Mayweather. Mayweather won't bring the fight to you. You got to bring the fight to Mayweather. And I correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the only fight that I can honestly remember where he brought the fight.
Well, Money Mayweather. That's the first time Money Mayweather did it.
Correct,
Pretty
correct,
boy,
correct.
pretty boy,
Pretty Boy
pretty
was a
boy brought
brawler.
the
Oh
fight,
yeah, I
and
agree.
that and that's what irritates me about a lot of these fans, right? They know Money Mayweather.
They
They
don't know
don't know
Pretty
Pretty
Boy.
Boy. They didn't. A lot of guys didn't even
Now
know
Pretty Boy
Mayweather
had
until he fought
hair,
De La Hoya.
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had to fade, the cold little
yeah,
fade. You know what I mean? A lot of
everything.
guys didn't even know Mayweather until De La Hoya fight, because
Oh
again,
yeah.
my biggest issue with all of these keyboard warriors in the comment section is that they call themselves real boxing fans, but they don't support the local guys. They don't support the local promoters. They don't support the amateurs. They don't support anyone. They only support who promoters market and tell them is the next guy, the big deal. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I've followed him since he was a prospect. I'm like, of course you did, because he was thrown in your face. But are you following, Samuel Arnold out of St. Louis?
Mhm.
I mean, are you following Antonio Tarver Jr.? Like,
Yeah,
we have another Tarver coming. Like, I don't think
yeah.
people really appreciate how special that name Tarver is,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Like,
agree.
like people don't appreciate Antonio Tarver enough. Like a lot, like he literally, if Tarver would have did what everybody else did, we wouldn't even know who he is. Tarver went and literally took it. He
Oh
didn't
yeah.
complain. He didn't cry. He said, I'm going to go fight everybody Roy fought. I'm going to fight Roy's mandatories. I'm going to beat Roy's mandatory and become his mandatory.
And he
And
was
then when
very
Roy went up
vocal,
to him,
but he backed it up.
man, Tarver is a legend. He is
Oh
he is
yeah.
a special, and he's there's too many underappreciated guys. DeMarcus Corley needs more respect, right? Because you didn't know you made it until you beat Chop Chop.
Uh-huh.
Like when Cotto beat Chop Chop, they knew Cotto was ready, right?
Right.
When Mayweather beat Chop Chop, Mayweather was ready, right? He took off. He was already Mayweather, but that was a rough and tough fight
Mhm.
Mayweather had to dig in that fight. People don't understand that Chop
Right.
is a real slick, savvy fighter. He's
Right.
technically sound. He just ain't Mayweather, right? He just couldn't
Right.
beat
Right.
Mayweather. But there were a lot of guys who Chop would knock out because they would underestimate him and they wouldn't take him serious. So again, if you beat Chop, you knew you were ready for that level. Like Chop was like that gatekeeper for the elites, not
Mhm.
just the gatekeeper for the A side or whatever, but it's like, all right, if you can beat Chop, you're one of the elites. You're one of the top guys. Because
Right.
Cotto did it, and a lot of guys tried to do it, and Chop was like, nah, it's a bad night for you, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, if these guys, if we start supporting our local promoters, local promotions, local fighters, then you get to actually appreciate boxing for what it is in its pure form of the sport, right?
Right.
Because it's like when you watch NBA, people are following guys in high school, they're following guys in college. Same with football, right?
Right.
Same with a lot of these other sports. You're following guys from their amateur days all throughout until they make it to the pro. So you're more invested into the sport and the sport's in good hands. But with boxing, it's not like that.
I,
Nobody's going to the gyms. Like go to the gym and just watch these guys fight. It's like treat every training camp that most guys go through like a media day. Just take
yeah.
your kids to the gym. Let your kids watch these guys because you don't even know who you're looking at. You don't know who you're watching. And shout out to Young Kings Boxing and Samuel Arnold, man. That dude is special.
Shout out.
He's the
Shout out.
next one. And a lot of people don't understand that. And Antonio Tarver Jr. too. I'm telling you, you let him go when he gets there. I can't wait, man. And I'm rooting,
Well, you guys
and I
heard it
can't
here.
wait.
You guys heard it
I
here
can't
first on
wait.
Off the
I'm
Hook.
telling y'all, you don't understand what having a Tarver in boxing means,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because they're gonna expose you of all the BS, all the hype, because they're gonna come and they're gonna bring their lunch pill. Tarver didn't have all the athletic gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Tarver didn't have the best skill set, but the man knew how to fight, right?
Oh yeah.
And he learned from Buddy, right?
He did,
I
yeah.
in my head every day I always hear you giving him too much respect, Antonio. That's all I replays in my head because I hate Antonio Tarver. Tarver was like he grounded it out and he wasn't afraid of any challenges. He wasn't afraid of any loss. He was actually like the comeback kid because any rematch he was gonna win.
Oh
He
yeah.
fought he fought Chad Johnson. He fought the young guys. He gave Bernard Hopkins a shot. He wasn't
Mhm.
afraid to fight. And then like me, I used to study psychology of fighters. I would study how these guys really think, like how like what makes them tick. Like, and I would end up like taking on a role of certain guys who I would study. Like, okay, I'm going to embody Hagler for my next fight. I'm going to embody, I'm gonna embody Roy and be a little slick, be a little showboat for my next fight. I'm gonna embody Bernard Hopkins. You know what I mean? I'm gonna like, you know what I mean? I would embody these guys and really, like, the interviews, the post-fight interviews, the interviews leading up to the fight that they were showing on HBO. I would like watch those and really see these guys' mindset and how they approach the game. George Foreman, I remember
You will
after,
implement that into your own game?
yeah, that would be my mindset in
That'll
sparring.
be your mindset. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the gym, that would be my mindset. It's like Denzel preparing for a role, right? He would embody that role. That was me. That was
Okay.
my mindset. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna take on, I'm gonna embody this person's psychology. So I'm not gonna be afraid of this and that. And this is what I'm gonna do. And I would just shadow box and I would do things like take certain moves and work certain things. And I would just
Right.
embody that whole mindset. Cause when you a fighter, you walk different. Cause you ain't worried
Right.
about nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if
Exactly.
you're a dedicated, prepared fighter, you ain't worried about nothing. It's like
True.
I'm good. And I
Yeah.
tell like any like young fighters I train, I'm like, yo, you got to really watch this guy and watch how he moves. And Antonio Tarver was that dude because I hated Tarver. Like, he knocked out my hero Roy. Like Roy
Yeah,
was my
yeah.
guy, right? Like the GOAT. Like I think, and people argue with me, like Sugar Ray Robinson, hands down, is from what he accomplished and what his skill set was, and just how he breathed fighting. Like fighting
Mhm.
for him was like breathing. That's how easy it was. He would like he fought what 3 or 4 times in a over the course, I believe, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
I
Like
think it was like about a month at most.
he lost
Yeah.
to Lamata, fought a guy the next week, fought Lamata again and beat him. And it was like that's how easy. And then they were like back to back to back,
And
right?
those days were 15 rounds.
Yeah. And so he didn't need to, he didn't need 3 months to regroup. He didn't need time to get his head right. He was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna beat this guy next week, who was a real contender. I can't remember his name off the top, but then I'm gonna go back and beat Lamata after I beat him. And that's how and that's what made him so special. That's why I won't argue with anyone who says he's a GOAT. Literally, he is. But I believe Roy in his prime beats everybody.
Oh, I used to love Roy, bro. Like that, everything, even like to what he wore, bro. Like all the Jordan gear and all that. Dude,
the tuxedo tops.
The tuxedo top. I wanted
how he had the little shag in the back of the head.
Yeah.
I wasn't brave enough to do that, but he had the little, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, this dude Roy, and just he would come to the ring, man. He was just different.
Those shoes, man, the Jordan shoes, his own shoes that came out under Jordan. Till this day,
I had them. I had every pair. I had every pair.
I didn't, man. I wanted some and I could not find them. And then I did find them one time, but not the color that I want. Remember the blue ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, the blue ones.
I had them all. I had the red, the blue, the gray.
The red. But the blue ones that he had, they didn't have my size.
No, they sold out. Everybody had them. One of my coaches, Coach Jimmy Jackson, he hated them. He hated when I wore them because he was like, they too heavy. Because he noticed that I didn't move as much, because I would fight like Roy fought against Ruiz, where I'm like, all right, Roy's fighting a little more patient now, right? And I would end up fighting like that a lot. I studied that fight a lot too. Like Roy versus Clinton Woods, that's one of my favorite fights.
Oh, okay.
And also Glenn Johnson and Oscar, and not Oscar, Orlando Cuellar, Coach Cuellar.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, like if you watch the Glenn Johnson versus Roy Jones fight and you listen to Cuellar in that corner, that's when I'm like, dude, I want to teach.
Yeah.
Like Cuellar is what, like there's been a lot of great trainers, but the fact that he gave Glenn like that, the vice he like, you like the game plan poured out and they fed off of each other. And Glenn executed it. He wasn't worried. Like the stuff I posted it on my Instagram, like his post-fight interview, he literally stuck to the game plan. He said most guys, you know, Roy would jump in, 1 shot, 2 shot, you know, take the angle off to the side. But he said, no, I'm gonna stay close enough to where if he hits me, I can at least hit him. Right? And he stuck to that. He wasn't worried about it. And he was just coming forward. And when he would go back to the corner, Cuellar would just start spitting. Like, I'm like, man, this dude is spitting. And then he will go out the next round and do exactly that, to the point where it was just there.